Hey everybody, it's Jenna here with youcanbrand.com. I just went on the most fabulous trip to Hawaii. I think it was probably the best vacation I've ever been on. I ended up going to the Big Island and staying in Kona, a place that I stayed at with two other lovely young ladies. One of my best girlfriends was getting married, and I got to stay with a couple of her friends in this fabulous sort of little bungalow cottage thing, surrounded by cows and wild boars and wild horses and lizards, and I got to swim with turtles, and oh, it was just like the most magnificent vacation. At one point I went on an 8-mile hike and crawled up a couple 30-foot walls without any gear on to get to some secret waterfalls. It was pretty much the best vacation I've ever had in my life. So I just got back, and I promised you guys before I left that I was going to do a review of some Hawaiian brands that I ran into. I was going to do the blog entry while I was on the trip, and I decided when I was on the trip that I deserved to have a real vacation with very little work. So I decided to postpone the review of the Hawaiian brands to give myself a little bit of a break. I'm so happy that I did, because while I'm all about work and play together, I think that it's really important sometimes to take some time off away from your business to get really good rest so that you can come back kicking ass. So I'm back now, and I'm ready to kick some ass, and I grabbed some things that I found along the way. What we're going to take a look at here are just some quick flyers that I picked up, and I saw some kind of, you know, common things that happen in design that are trends, that some are a little bit weaker and some are stronger, and so we're going to take a look at both these. Now, none of these things are considered quote-unquote bad design. They just are even the most professional ones that we're going to look at, there could be some room for improvement. First one we're going to start off with is this flyer for Buddha's cup. Now this little coffee company has developed this kind of cute little flyer here with a nice little Buddha picture holding a cup. So we could say that the concept and theme of this is not bad at all. It's actually pretty cute, this idea of Buddha's cup and this idea of coffee. What we can see here, though, that is kind of a common trend with a lot of companies that are health companies or companies that have a tendency to be like sort of mom and pop shops. They have a tendency to use papyrus. So this font we see a lot of different places, mostly for massage and health companies. And so where papyrus became famous, actually, was because it was one of the cool looking fonts that you could find in MS Word for a long time. And a lot of people still really love it. There's actually some famous movies out there that have used this font and so on and so forth. But it's something that we see a lot of. And so if your business is trying to stick out amongst people in that similar sort of industry, whether it be like food or beverage or health, maybe using papyrus may not be like should be the first choice necessarily, because we see it a lot. And when you're thinking of a brand for your company, it's really important to have kind of a unique style and feel. And so this is pretty fitting for the theme in terms of the idea of Buddha. It's kind of fitting for the idea of old world feel or something relating to Buddhism. But in terms of it, you know, overusing fonts, we just have to be careful about this. Other fonts that kind of have that same feeling of being a bit overused because they're kind of cool and you can get them as default fonts and they're free, is something like Scriptina. Scriptina is like a really good, like, fancy font. So I would look at that. Then the other thing that we want to look at here is the use of alignment. So we always want to make sure things that line up on a grid, and this little 2010 part is breaking the grid here. Fabulous coffee. It's just like the simplest things, aligning things to the left or right depending on where the sides of images are to make sure that there is a relationship between each section of the design. So that's what I have to say about that one. This is a really common thing that we see in a lot of designs. So this is a really fun concept and theme called Captain Zodiac. And so we can see here that they have a little bit of a pirate theme. Now that's not a bad thing, especially if Captain Zodiac was like a pirate or something. But the things to look at here are the use of color. So the use of yellow and red. We would have to kind of take a look at some pirate sorts of things to see if those colors would really be that common. And then we also have reverse text here. And the problem with reverse text, which is white text on a black background, is that it's not as inviting to read as if it was dark text on a brighter background. So this is something that we see a lot, again, in when people are doing their own in-house design. But we would want to, if we work for this company, to really encourage people to read this, and because it's reverse text, that may not happen. So that would be my recommendation here. If we look at the back here, there's all these like really amazing pictures. And so one thing to take these to the next level is by maybe instead of having them stacked one on top of each other, having some sort of grid where they're full bleed. Now there's this thing that's called open form and closed form. And so open form is when an image goes to off the edge of the page. And this helps the reader or the viewer be able to imagine that the environment goes on forever. And so when we don't have that, it has a tendency to have more of like a scrapbook feel, which may not be a bad thing, but if you're going for like a very sort of magazine, sort of professional type of feel, that can always be a great option. Now, one thing that they did do that was really cool here was that they have this little line here showing different parts of the island, which is really great for kind of showing where their adventures are happening. And they also have good visual language because they're making the headlines exactly the same in terms of having these little banners in the same size, same font, all the way down. This is what we call developing a visual language. It also helps with this thing called visual chunking. So we can easily go from a little group of information to little group of information, and the headlines will really allow the viewer to be able to understand what that group of information is about. So it's super important to have these things be different than the copy below it to make the reader very easily be able to jump from one section to the next. This is not a bad flyer design, just quick little things to improve it based on making things more readable, and also maybe giving it more of a polished look by having things be open form versus closed form. So now we're going to take a look at two luau brochures. And this luau brochure is got a lot of really great design things happening on it, and there's some things to be fixed as well. So what we can see here, and I don't know if you guys can really see this, but there's this nice little triangle pattern behind the words here. We also see a doubled up word thing to allow luau to stay in white so that it kind of pops off the page, but it has that black behind it to make it more readable. If it didn't have that, it wouldn't be as readable. We have a nice contrast here with the style of font being, a serif font in bold, and then we have a much larger sort of nice trendy sort of scripty like font that's below. That's creating a really nice contrast of style and size here, which is great. Then we get down into here where we have the other headline and a little tagline and then a logo. What's really cool about this, as you guys can see, this is not a typical symmetrical design. It actually goes down and then to the right. It's not perfectly symmetrical because, as you can see here, the headline is off to the right a little bit. This makes it more interesting, and it kind of is going with the flow of the picture. What's really neat about this, the colors are great, is that they ended up, instead of like this picture of this woman likely is cut off right here. And what this designer did is they actually put some leaves to not have there be a hard edge. And that's a really great little technique for framing other text. And so as we can see here, that's a good little trick for you to note, that just by, instead of having a shape or instead of having something behind the letters to get them to pop off the page, to have like a dark sort of solid green that's actually something that would be a part of the environment makes this feel like more of an experience versus it just being a way to get the words to be readable. So this is really great. So the only thing that I would change about this one is that this picture feels a little stock-like because she's so perfect. Her headpiece is perfect, flower is perfect, smile is perfect. And studies have shown that actually showing a little bit more authenticity through things being live action or real ends up evoking more of an emotion from the audience. So that would be the only change that I would see that would be necessary here. Everything else is really good. And then on the inside of the flyer, you kind of see the same sort of thing happening with these kind of like perfectly positioned stock images, which is not bad. It makes it look very professional, but again, it's not evoking that potentially like emotion that they could be getting had it been like a sort of much more authentic, real feel. We do see reverse text here, which again, as we just talked about, is a little bit harder to read. Studies have shown that just people don't retain it as much, and it's not as inviting. But we do see a really great headline here. We see a little award that's breaking the grid, which is excellent. And one of the things I love about this design, actually, is that they use these really great ways to break up framing. So instead of it, again, just being a shape or something, they're actually creating an environment, which is fantastic. It's something to be noted about, you know, instead of just having a square picture, actually giving it some sort of edge here is really going to help it integrate into the environment of the piece and make it feel more professional. Great work on that, and they do it all the way through, even on the back, having these framing. And notice here, again, this is what we call that open form, where the image is going to the edge of the paper, which makes you imagine this whole other world behind him versus it just being a square picture on here. So that's pretty exciting stuff. Excellent. And so this last one is done through Hilton, and this is for their Legends of Hawaii luau. And so there's a couple of really great things happening here. Notice how it's just one picture. And the picture, again, because of the way that it is bleeding, that this actually is the only part that goes off and shows the end of the picture, but it's not a hard line, so that's good. So this feels very integrated into the piece here. They got a great action shot. Like, this doesn't feel very stock, if you can see this here, which is really great. The other thing is they have excellent font choices, beautiful, you know, timeless feeling. There's nothing too trendy or cheesy about this sort of font, which is excellent. There's a nice contrast of size between, you know, luau is a lot bigger than the rest of the writing here, which really emphasizes what this is for. And but again, we have a centered alignment down here at the bottom, which is technically considered not as interesting as if it was asymmetrical, but they did some really nice things. It's a small enough amount of text that it's easy to get through, so that's good. So that's what I have for brochures that I found in Hawaii in terms of graphic design. The overall branding of things, as we saw, some of these things really kind of told stories, especially, you know, the Buddhist cup was kind of created a character for their brand. The Captain Zodiac with the pirate theme was starting to give the idea of like a pirate adventure. We saw with the luau ones some kind of what the experience was like, which is really important from a branding perspective, and also to draw those readers in to make them super excited about attending an event, especially something like a luau. The one that takes the cake is this right here. This is called Hawaii Volcanic Water, and it's called lava filtered natural artisan water. So what's cool about this, as you can see, is it's got an embossed sort of, it's actually etched into the bottle as a part of their logo. But if you look at the actual logo itself, it's very simple typeface script with a really nice basic sort of slightly serif font underneath. I think that this is copper plate is the font that's underneath here. So really nice contrast in size and style. They then emphasize the fact that it's lava filtered natural artisan water, because this is a really important selling point for this. You know, most water that is sold in Hawaii is not lava filtered. This is probably their competitive advantage. And look at how beautiful the bottle is. So I had, they even have this like really cool diagram on the back here that shows how it's lava filtrated, which I think is great. So this bottle of water costs $4. Oh, and what you can also see here is that the Hawaiian Islands are also etched into the bottle. Very fancy. So for a $4 bottle of water, one of the things that I realized with the family that I was staying with is that we were going on a Hawaiian adventure that day, and one of the moms said to me, "Hey Jenna, can you grab me one of those bottles of water?" And I go, haha, I have to totally cover this in the branding video because the design is so cool that somebody specifically wanted me to go out and get them this so they could take it home as a souvenir. And so when you are thinking about your own branding in any sort of marketing material that you create for your business, whether it's a fun sheet or a worksheet or a PDF or an ebook or something that your viewers can print out, you're gonna want to make it so interesting to look at that they would want to keep it as a souvenir. And I learned this a long time ago from designing from a restaurant, that I used some of the people who worked in the restaurant in the logo, and they were really beautiful women. And people were starting to steal the menus off the table, and somebody got the logo of the women tattooed on their arm. And so that's when I realized that if you want to get into branding that's going to cause people to be fanatical about your business, then it's really, really, really important that you develop design that makes people excited, that makes people want to take your stuff and keep it and make it a part of their memory of working, interacting with your business. So yeah, so that's what I have for you today about Hawaiian brands. I also have developed a survey that I am very interested in what you want to learn more about branding and design. So if you click on the link below, you should be able to log into or to answer this 5-question survey that's going to help me develop more products and services, and also help me develop some free training that I'm doing for webinars and I'm doing for the reformat of my site. So big changes are coming. I'm super excited that you're here and that you're following me. I hope that you learned some things about design and branding today and about these Hawaiian brands specifically. So I will look forward to hearing your comments and in the blog, and if you're on YouTube right now, in the YouTube comments. I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks. Have a good day.